In your film, you set up a confrontation between cisgender men who are participating in a bachelor party and gay women who are looking to relax from the gaze of the world.
Mhm.
Since you are identifying with the women in the film, what did you want to characterize about each side in regard to the interaction between the two?
Um, I think I was, I really wanted first to focus on the humanity of like both sides of people because I think I really wanted it to be relatable to people who maybe have harmed queer folks without realizing it. Um, so it was important to me that it wasn't just like black and white, like uh the queer group of women is good and then like the dudes are bad. Like I really first of all wanted to focus on the reaction and the feelings that the queer women have, and then I wanted to focus on the sort of like the stakes in it for the guys who are at the bachelor party. So what how they respond immediately to the act of bigotry that happens in the movie was important to me because they do apologize, they're sorry, but they don't really understand what that means, and they don't really understand the full impact of the harm. Because I think like when you're on when you're on the receiving end of an act of violence, as a queer person or any marginalized identity, uh, it can feel like you don't really even understand what just happened. I wanted to sit with the feelings of the queer women and then have the guys sort of fade into the background after it happens.
Your character of Mary is one most uneasy with the men's presence and the labels that the women have to endure when the bachelor party invades the lake house. How close is Mary to your actual self? Does it speak to how you were in the past or how it is still for you in the present?
Yeah, I mean it's very close. It's like exactly me. I would say I definitely have grown a lot since I based this movie off of a particular incident that happened in my life, and I definitely have grown since then. And the act of creating this movie has also been a really healing process for me. So um, I do feel like that I would be able to respond a little bit differently. I think the longer I've been sort of out as a queer person, having a marginalized identity, walking around the world with a marginalized identity, I think I'm less shocked. So I have a little bit more agency to for how I'm going to deal with it.
Going back again to your character, I got the impression that she was someone who had only recently come out or had come to terms about her life as a gay woman.
Mhm.
Do you have similar issues in your own life as you navigated your true self? And how were those traits part of Mary's character?
Again, it's so similar to who I am slash who I was when I wrote the film. Definitely, um, definitely the character, and you're so spot on. Like the character in the movie is struggling with like having just come out and feeling like wanting to belong and like wanting to look a certain way and seem a certain way. Um, and so any sort of knock to that is, even if it's like the lightest little tap, is gonna sort of make all the pieces crumble. Um, which is why I wanted to focus on her response to the sort of climactic moment in the movie. Definitely did. I came out in my mid 20s, and so
Wow.
I was feeling really self-conscious about that for a long time, without understanding that like a lot of people have that same journey. I really wanted to carve out my own space as a queer person in my art. So I just hadn't really made space in my art for who I was and that part of my identity. Um, and it ended up being a much more personal thing than I originally set out to do. Um, I I just wanted so much to prove to myself that like I have something to say with regards to my identity. Um, and that ended up being about the sort of disconnect or cognitive dissonance that happens when I return home to the South. Really make me question myself again and like make me revert back to a lot of old ways. So I wanted to explore that. And that was an intersection that I hadn't seen this explored a lot in stories. So then I felt like, okay, like I have something to say here.
Although attitudes are changing rapidly, much of how a cisgender woman is and how she acts is filtered through a still dominant patriarchal society. How do the women of your film, and in the context of the film, create a support society that counters the so-called male gaze and the influence of that patriarchal power?
Honestly, I think that just by choosing to do this trip, that's their attempt at doing that. The women in the film are trying as much as possible to make their own space in this shared environment, right? Like there's a scene where they're on the porch and the guys are like in the kitchen, like playing drinking games and stuff. Like they're sort of like they're trying to build their own little environment. And they just keep getting interrupted and they keep getting interrupted and they keep getting interrupted. So eventually I think what happens is they just like sort of acquiesce and they're like, like maybe it'll be fun if you can't beat them, join them type deal. And then they all start to like hang out at the bonfire together. So that's my thought around that is it's like, I mean, we're here, these dudes are doofy, like they're fine, whatever. I think it's like a gradual descent into allowing these guys into their little bubble. And feeling like, oh, like we're all getting along, it's comfortable. And then that's when this sort of like upsetting things happen.
Finally, what does it mean to have your short film among the celebration of women and gender nonconforming filmmakers night at the Midwestern Film Festival on Tuesday, August 2nd at the Gene Siskel Film Center? Plug.
I'm so excited. I'm really excited. I think I love going to see movies at the Gene Siskel. It's just going to be so cool. and I've been a part of a full festival circuit with my last short that I produced and starred in. And it was entirely online because it was all during the pandemic. So I've really not had the chance to go to a lot of festivals in person. And I know a lot of the other people who worked on these other films, which is really neat to me because the last time I was in something in the Midwest Film Fest, I didn't know anybody. So it's sort of like a fun metric for, how I'm like getting to know people and learn more about this community. I just think it's a cool event and I'm really excited to see everyone and hear people's reactions. Like that's the best part about being in a movie is like seeing it with other people. So.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2022.